Hello everybody, welcome back to Momo vs. MTG. Today, we'll be taking a look at another personal deck tech of mine, um, centered around Myrkul, Lord of Bones. So for 4 mana and pay as ban, you get a legendary creature god. As long as your life total is less than or equal to half your starting life total, Myrkul, Lord of Bones is indestructible. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you may exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's an enchantment, and loses all other card types. So, in a pretty recent set, Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate, this was spoiled, and I was immediately drawn to this. And what really brought me to want to make a deck around this is Yumori, right? And I'm actually running him as the companion. So, Yumori reads for 2 mana, hybrid Golgari for 2. You get a legendary creature Ooze as the companion. Each non-land card in your starting deck shares a card type. As Yumori, the collector, enters the battlefield, choose a card type. Spells of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast. So, in order to run this as a companion, you need every card in your deck to be a creature. And we did just that. So we're running 65 creatures, including the commander, and the rest are lands. And the companion ruling did change since Ikoria, where you used to be able to have this in your starting hand, but now it kind of functions similar to the command zone, where it's not in your starting hand. You have to pay 3 mana at any time, and you can put this guy from your sideboard into your hand. But it functions different, so when a companion dies, it doesn't go back to a command zone per se. It'll just go to the graveyard or any, exile, whatever zone it's trying to go to. But yeah, it's effectively your 101st card in Commander. This is probably the only way that you could do that. So, without further ado, let's jump right into this. And of course, I like to start usually with the ramp package, right? So we're in Asban colors, and of course, if we're running only creatures, we're looking at the mana dorks that are really good. So effects like Birds of Paradise, fantastic for 1 green mana. You're adding mana of any color. We're really looking for the mana dorks who fix our colors as well as ramp us. Um, Deathrite Shaman, I think, is one of the better mana dorks in Commander because it's targeted graveyard hate as well as ramp. And that's a very powerful effect to have for 1 mana here. Delighted Halflane, absolutely great because we want to be getting to our commander as fast as possible. And especially with 2 toughness here for 1 mana, you're getting a lot of value. A couple I will, point to and highlight is Fairburrow Elder is slam dunk in this deck because you're adding colored mana for among permanents you control. So you can potentially get 3 mana just by tapping this eventually. And since you have all creatures, you're going to be having a lot of colored permanents on the battlefield at any given time. Then we have mana reduction spells. Besides Yumori, Yumori does count towards the ramp package, but Nalia counts towards that. Of course, Solemn's a slam dunk because it has an ETB and leaves the battlefield effect. So Solemn accrues a lot of value in this deck because you can potentially get 2 basic lands if you turn them into enchantment later on. And then the fun part about these mana dorks is you can tap them for mana during the phase where they're a creature. When they die and come back as an enchantment token, you can immediately tap them again because they're technically not a creature and don't have summoning sickness. So a lot of these activate abilities become a lot better when they come back as static enchantments. Um, and of course, what works exceedingly well is, yeah, we found another way to break Devoted Druid. Who would have guessed? Um, because once Devoted Druid comes back as an enchantment, you have access to unlimited green mana and unlimited -1/-1 counters on an enchantment for what that's worth, right? Um, because if Devoted Druid dies while a creature come back as an enchantment, you can then infinitely put -1/-1 counters on enchantment, and enchantments don't care about that. So that is one neat little combo here. And then recent addition, Lotho here. A lot of value here for 2 mana. You're getting treasures. Fixes you. These are all nice things to have. And 15 pieces of ramp I think is pretty solid. Could have more. But, considering our commander's very expensive, we want to try to get them out as fast as we can. Usually not the first creature, of course, though, because it's pretty, this is a target that you want, that other players want to remove because it's, very expensive. So moving down, let's jump over to protection, because once your commander's out, he has the indestructible clause, but you're not always going to be at 20 life or less to gain that free indestructibility on him. So we have cards like we have both Giver Runes and Mother Runes, fantastic at protecting a permanent around. So we want these, ideally out while we are trying to cast our commander, so it resolves, it'll stay around. Furthermore, we have Sigard, Fountain of Blessings, gives your permanents a hexproof. Also, nice added bonus where you can cast angels and humans from the top of a library, and this deck has a surprising amount of humans for sure, and I think a couple angels for that matter. And Fountain Watch is an interesting creature here because this gives our enchantments Shroud. So once our creatures die, come back as enchantments, we want to have them stay around too, right? Because this is a very board-centric deck, of course, right? We don't have any instants or sorceries, so we were trying to protect our stuff as best as we can. And giving them Shroud, Hexproof is definitely the best way around it. And this is absolutely slam dunk in this deck. Guardian of Augmenter. So it's can be a combat trick, because this deck's trying to look for instant speed combat tricks, which is, you only get so many with creatures. But this one protects your commander with hexproof, which is great. And then the rest of these protection spells here are deterrent effects, Archon Coordination. When this thing enters the battlefield, you become Monarch. As long as you're a Monarch, damage doesn't cause you to lose life. So this is like a free hit, essentially, once per turn if you're the Monarch. Because we're on the building value, accruing value over time direction in this deck. So that's what we're trying to do, and these help this game plan quite a bit. From there, let's take a look at the Hate Bearer or potential stack pieces, depending how you view this, right? 2 cards we take big advantage in the stacks department is Thalia, Guardian of Thravenban, right? Legendary creature, first strike, non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. Of course, these effects here, Bring Wingmare, same thing, don't affect us. These are one-sided stack piece effects, which is great. This is not affecting us in particular. And then we have piece of Graveyard Hate, Scavenging Ooze. This is great. Comes back as an enchantment. You could still exile cards from graveyards. It's no longer a creature with the counters, so you're not growing its power per se, but at least you can still have some graveyard hate. And any of these creatures, when they come back as enchantment, it's going to be really good for you. Uh, a soft lock, is you have a Platinum Angel or Platinum Emporium effect, right? Platinum Angel reads, you can't lose the game, your opponents can't win the game. As an enchantment, is pretty hard to remove, especially if you're in Rakdos colors. They have a very difficult time dealing with enchantments in blue to some degree, and same with Platinum Imperium, right? So if your life total can't change or you can't lose the game, it's tough to lose the game. So getting to a board state where this is your lock on your opponents is sometimes just good enough. So those are fun, and since we're trying to ramp really with a lot of mana, we can usually get there to cast these bad boys. Uh, Moving down from there, we have our kill stuff package. We try to run as much removal as possible. And the great thing about the ones that sack themselves, like Cathar Commando, sacrifice, destroy target artifact enchantment. Once this dies, again, if our commander's out, it'll come back. We can do this again. So a lot of these are 2-for-1, building a lot of value. And I think an absolute slam dunk that came out last year is Tranquil Thrillback. It's a creature dinosaur, but the fantastic part about this guy is he only costs 3 mana. They counterspell it, great, no longer there. You can wait because it says when Thrillback enters the battlefield, you can pay green mana up to 3 times. When you do, you can choose one or more of these modes. So you can destroy target artifact enchantment, great. Exile target player's graveyard, fantastic. Gainful life, kind of nice. And of course, when he dies, he'll come back as enchantment, and you can do it all again for even less mana. And then the evoke stuff is fantastic too, because they automatically sack themselves. Solitude being a free one. If you use all your mana to cast your commander, per se, then at least you can, play his creature out. If you have a white card to exile a creature, Shriek Maul, another fantastic evoke. And then the last evoke creature here, Foundation Breaker, artifact enchantment removal. And then, of course, you go down the list, more creature removal, Shieldred, and slam dunk here, Massacre Worm, right? Getting this thing back as an enchantment, even during the same turn potentially, with a sack outlet, you're giving all the creatures potentially -4/-4, and also a big drain effect on their life totals. So having this stick around is very nice as an enchantment. And then this leans into the aristocrat theme. You have Asban colors, so we're leaning towards that direction a little bit. Blood Artist, very nice, and as an enchantment, sticking around because 0/1 body, it's not that tough to kill in Commander format, so having it come back as an enchantment, pretty great. And then Thieving Amalgam is another card that's a slam dunk as an enchantment, right? Because you're going to be stealing your opponent's cards, having them become creatures, and then also, when these creatures die that you own but don't control, your opponent's going to be losing life, you're going to be gaining life. So these two effects are going to be keeping you alive while draining your opponent, which is great. And then furthermore, speaking of the aristocrat themes, we have some sack outlets, which is pretty vital in this deck. I'm running 6, and I'm not opposed to increasing this number, because sometimes having the ability to sack your board, turning them into enchantments as your leisure, is something that you want more often than not, surprisingly, right? Because if you have a full board of creatures, cast your commander, you kind of want to accrue value with it if it resolves, because someone can remove it the next turn. And with a sack outlet, especially a free one like Visayas here, you can guarantee that you have some creatures come back as enchantments, So you're not left with nothing if the board wipe happens or something along those lines. Fiend Artisan, very nice because it goes tutor for something. It's like a birthing pot effect. Um, Dockside Chef also sack outlet, but also draws you cards. Um, and Ghost Rider's your other free sack outlet, while the other ones you do once per turn. But just accrues value, drawing cards, everything above. Um, but we still have a decent amount of pure card draw effect. Um, yeah. Um, so the cheap creatures like Archivist of Agma, someone searches the library, you're drawing cards, gaining life. Keen Duelist, you have a lot of higher mana value, so you're generally gaining value off this. Because you flip something like a Masker Worm or Elish Norn, you're going to be dealing damage to them because at the beginning of your upkeep, you and target opponent each reveal the top card of your library. You each lose life to its mana value of that card revealed by the other player, and you put the revealed card into your hand. So you're helping an opponent. You can use as a political tool. Hey, do you want to draw a card? Or if you want to try and smack someone for damage, this is how to do it. Spirit Companion, right? Draw a card, dies, come back as an enchantment, draw a card. More Opportunist, of course, accruing value if creatures die every turn. And then we have some constellation synergies in this deck, of course, too. This one being a good one because not only will it grow itself, but draw a card once these creatures come back as enchantments. Because we technically have very few enchantments. We have the enchantment creatures like Eidolon of Blossoms, which also, of course, still triggers off itself, but Citizen Champion will also trigger off itself once it comes back as an enchantment, so that's, fantastic. If you have these two out, you're drawing a lot of cards when your creatures come back. Beast Whisperer for all the recent creatures. So we're usually doing pretty good on ramp and draw. And if we get to some of our good stuff here, we're really sitting pretty. So Selfless Glyph Warden is one of our only... Is it our only? Yes, it is. It's our only sorcery spell in the deck, technically, because there is a backside. Dual Moto cards, you have creature on the front and something on the back, are legal with Yumori. So at least we have access to a sorcery. It's expensive, but it's either a protection against a board wipe, which is great. Also can sack itself to come back as enchantment. Also sorcery, which is a true board wipe. So this is one of the closest things we have to a true board wipe. And then going down from there, I like to highlight all these. Archon, Sun Grace, Constellation. Whenever another enchantment you control enters the battlefield, you create a 2/2 Pegasus. So you're building an army, slowly accruing value. This comes back as enchantment, creating more Pegasus. They also have lifelink, keeps you alive. And slam dunk in the deck, right? No questions asked. Vizier of the Manjare, effects like this. You may cast the top card of your library if it's a creature. Half the time, more than half the time it's going to be a creature. So it's almost like having access to your entire deck in a way, and can be just a lot of card advantage. God Eternal Ketra, a lot of value here because whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 4/4 zombie tokens. And it also protects itself in a way, but if we don't have a commander out. Things making tokens in our favor, going to be fantastic for the deck. And then also I'd like to highlight Elish Norn here, because it's a permanent Massacre Worm effect, giving everything -2/-2, especially if it comes back as an enchantment, and also buffing your own creatures. Great as well. Can shut down a lot of boards with this thing out. So this is the general overview of the deck and how it functions. Like I state again, our main game plan is to have a lot of the mana dorks early on, um, some good value pieces, some good draw engines, and of course protection when we can on the board, um, so that when we do drop our Myrkul, that it's set up to either accrue value instantly by sacking creatures to get those permanent. I say permanent, but those enchantment tokens, which are a lot stickier than creatures, having them around. You'd be surprised how much like a Blood Artist has put in work just on itself staying around against like token decks, and then a board wipe happens, you're draining another player and gaining a lot of life if they have a lot of tokens that die. Um, yeah. Couple lands like the highlight. You'll have Phyrexian Tower. Sack outlet lands are fantastic, especially if they add mana. Helps you get to your commander, or have a sack outlet. Furthermore, Castle Garen Bridge has basically is mana positive. Well, of course mana positive, but potentially an extra mana as a land because we're only casting creature spells. Castle lock lane, some extra card draw just in case, and some of the channel lands here for extra artifact enchantment removal. Yeah, Plaza Heroes, which is one of my favorite cards that came out, I guess 2 years ago now, because helps you cast legendary permanents for mana fixing. Um, but then also you can give a target creature hexproof and indestructible to end a turn, so doubles as protection as a land. And then just other general fixing, because you want to be able to hit your color drops. I find that you want, of course, green early on, and usually white is higher demand. If we take a look at, the pip requirement distribution here. Yeah. So if you have any questions, any thoughts about the deck, please drop them down below. If there's something else you'd like to see, please let me know. But yeah, without further ado, thanks for watching, and please like, subscribe, and till the next one.